Hey guys, and welcome. I'm the Seven Swords, and we are out of character for this one. This isn't going to be part of the main series, so I'm putting this out of character. Um, this is right before we go back to the college. It's right after we've defeated the Caller and got all of her stuff. It's right after we've read her journal. Sarah's literally sitting where I left her. I'm going to be reading through the three books that you take back to the college so that we can read those before we go back. So this might not be very long. It might be a bit longer. I don't know. It all depends on how long it takes me to read through the books. But I am putting this out of character because I do feel like this isn't something of great interest. Um, for those of you who are enjoying the in-character stuff, sorry. Um, but I wanted to be able to read this out of character. Um, I know the Night of Tears is one of them due to the fact that I played this quest before, and I know that this is the important quest book. I actually haven't read this before, so I'm interested to see what it's about. I've also know that the other one is the Last King of the Aliens, and then I'm not entirely sure what the other book is. I guess it could be the Ferment or maybe the City of Stone, but I think those are the ones I had couple copies of. That's what I have is I have the ones that I have the copies of and other such things. Um, Not entirely sure. We're at least gonna read the Night of Tears, and um, we're at least gonna read the Night of Tears and read the Last King of the Aliens. I'm not sure what book the other one is. I might look at my quest log and see if it tells me which books they are, or I might try dropping these depending on how long this takes. We're gonna do the Night of Tears first because this is the book that has to do with the actual quest line, and I've never read it before, and I'm gonna read it now. Night of Tears, Darren Seleth. Arthal holds a prominent place in Skyrim's history, even it, even its, even if most do not remember it by name. It is, of course, the site of one of the first major Nord settlements, one of the first cities of men in Skyrim, and the earliest known capital of their civilization. It was also the site of a terrible bloodshed when the elves attempted to drive the Nords out of Skyrim to succeed only in incurring their wrath in the form of Ysgramor and his fabled 500 companions, who swept the elves from Skyrim and firmly established it as the home of the Nords. So that's interesting. I knew Sarthal was old and I knew it was important. I didn't realize it was a capital. So that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought it to be a capital anyways because of the fact that it doesn't look like a capital. It doesn't even look like somewhere you could live. I always found that interesting about the Skyrim dungeons. Like, they talk about them being places that you would live, but none of them look very livable. Like, I wouldn't want to live in any of them. Um, all that is known, but little else. Oh, all this is known, but little else. What happened on that night of tears when Sarthal was razed to the ground that provoked the elves to such a deliberate, vicious attack, and what from such a severe response from the Nords? Venerous treaties on the Altmer attendants suggest that the elves of the Merithic era, along with their counterparts, the early Dunmer, or Dwemer, very different races, possessed a degree of sophistication unparalleled in Tamriel. They displayed power beyond what could be expected at the time, while a distinct explanation is not given to us. I believe that this work, compared with the earlier writings of Iris suggests that something greater was at work that night in Sarthal. 1 second. And I'm back. Um, Interesting thoughts. I'm definitely glad that I'm reading through this. I've never actually read. I've done this quest probably not over 20 times, and I've never read this book. So this is actually quite interesting. I've mainly sat down to read it, but never actually have. Let's continue. The true motives behind the Night of Tears have been obscured to us by the passage of time, but I believe that was not a simple war of territory or the control of Skyrim. I believe that what happened was a significant event based around something very particular. The Nords found something when they built their city. Buried deep in the ground, they attempted to keep it buried, but the elves learned of it and coveted it for themselves. Thus they assaulted Sarthal, their goal not to drive the Nords out, but to secure this power for themselves. I believe Ysgramor knew something of what the elves would find in Sarthal, and rallied together his people to keep the elves from gaining it. When the Nords once again controlled Skyrim, this power was buried deep below the earth and sealed away. Time was kept Time has kept this knowledge from us, but it is my hope that time will also reveal the truth of these words. Every effort will be made to relocate Sarthal and find that which has been lost to us. Okay, so basically, so the Night of Tears is basically talking about the orb. Um, like I said, I've done this quest quite a few times, so I know what the orb is, but we're going to go ahead and just not talk about that, um, because I don't want to spoil that for the people who don't know. Um, but um, that makes sense that would be the thoughts. And now it makes sense what the Night of Tears, what this book is, as far as why it does help. I also like the fact that it has the same eye, because this, like, symbol keeps popping up. Like, it's on all the Shalador's insights. Like, I think it's funny that the Shalador Insight books and this are the exact same. So, like, it feels like this should be a Shalador's Insight book, but it's not. So that's weird. Um, the Last King of the Aliens is the next one. This was the other book that we picked up. I don't know if these three books have anything in common. If I can figure out what the third book is, and if I read through all three of them, maybe we'll figure that out. But The Last King of the Aliens by Haren and Chesenen. The Aliens of the Heartland High Elves, ruled Cyrodiil in the long ages of the mythic before the beginning of recorded history. One of the earliest record dates in the fact is that fall of the White Gold Tower in the First Era, 343, which is commonly assumed to mark the end of the aliens. Okay, so I know a little bit about the aliens. I know that all of the ruins in Cyrodiil are alien ruins, and that the aliens were basically elves that basically we were fighting, that didn't like people. Like, elves apparently don't like humans in general for a lot of Tamriel history, for as far as I know. So that's interesting. Although alien rule over all of Cyrodiil was indeed broken in First Era 243, this was only one of the most obvious stages near the end of a long decline. The first 2 centuries of the First Era saw increasingly strife between the great alien lords of Cyrodiil. Alesia appears to have taken advantage of this period of civil war to launch her uprising. Imperial historians have traditionally attributed her victory to intervention from Skyrim, but it appears that she had at least much help from rebel alien lords during the siege of the White Gold Tower. Okay, so the White Gold Tower is the center of the Imperial City in Cyrodiil. For those of you that have played Oblivion, the White Gold Tower is its throat of the world. Basically, you see it from all over the map. It's a pretty prominent point. It's also one of the towers of Cyrodiil, the towers of Tamriel, which the towers are all important. Um, Hard to say, really. of what the each tower was or what it is. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff that I've done research into, but I haven't really explored it myself, so I don't quite understand it in full. But it is interesting, especially since I did know about the Civil War going on when she, um, what was her name? Um, Alicia. I know that she was like part of the group that like did an uprising against them. So that's an interesting to be pointed out in this book. How long is this book? Not super long. I more of wanted to have an idea of how long I would be reading this. These aren't taking very long, so these will all probably be in one video. The popular image of the Aelids as brutal slave masters is based in fact, of course, but it is less well known that a number of Aelid princes continued to rule part of Cyrodiil after 2043 as vassals to the new Emperor of Cyrodiil. This suggests that either that Aelid rule was not universally destined, or that Alicia and her successors were more pragmatic than in traditional believed, or perhaps some of both. I do apologize. I have poor reading skills, so doing this is probably a terrible idea. I also have trouble, like, I couldn't even tell you. Oh, not universally detested. Okay. I have trouble sparsing what these words are. These D's look really strange. So reading this stuff is not easy for me, especially with my poor reading skills. Um, but I did want to do this, and I'm, like I said, I'm going to keep this as a second part. What I might do eventually is I might put more of these, where I basically read through each of these books um, in turn, but I don't know how many of them I'm going to read. Probably some, not all, but we'll see. In any event, excavations at a number of alien sites shown continued operation and even expansion during the so-lated called Late Alien Period 1E 243 to 498. At first, many alien lords continued to rule as vassals of the new human regimen. In some cases, alien supporters of Alicia were even rewarded with new lands taken from slain enemies. It is not clear to what extreme extent human slavery continued under the Cyrodiilic Empire. Humans continued to dwell in the alien-ruled areas of Cyrodiil, but there is nothing definitive to show under what terms. It'd be kind of interesting if she let them continue having slaves. Wouldn't be unheard of, but it would definitely be interesting to find out that she was basically having a bunch of aliens who were basically keeping slaves. This was an uneasy relationship from the beginning and was not destined to last long, obviously. I couldn't imagine having a group of people basically from the same race that kill a bunch of your people hanging out together would be long term. Resentment at the continued presence of alien nobles within the empire was a contributed factor to the rise of the so-called Alessian Order founded by Mariuk. I'm reading that wrong. The first victims of the Alessians were the aliens of Cyrodiil. In the early 300s, the surviving alien communities in human-ruled areas were obliterated one by one, and the refuge temporarily swelling of the power of the remaining alien lordships. This is the last 4 pages. Then in 361, the Elysian gained control of the empire and enforced the Elysian doctrine throughout its dominion. The alien lordships were abolished. Enforcement of this decree does not appear to have required much direct violence. It seems that by this point, the balance of power was so overwhelming against them, and their fate so long foreshadowed, that most of the remaining aliens simply left Cyrodiil, eventually being absorbed into the elven populations of Valenwood and High Rock. Indeed, the rise of the Dominion hegemony may be linked to the exodus of the aliens from Cyrodiil, a connection so far little studied by historians. Still, a remnant of alien population seems to have survived the rule of the Elysians because we hear of the last king of the aliens. I was wondering if they were going to bring that up in this book. Joining the Battle of Immortal, where the Dynast Directive defeated Elysian in 482. How this king's people survived the preceding centuries is unknown. We do not even know who they were, although recent research points to Nenalata as the possible resting place of this last king. Unfortunately, in the current state of the empire, funds are no longer available for proper scientific investigation of such extensive ruins. So the answer to these questions will have to be left to future generations. Interesting. I wonder if you could travel to this place. Like I wonder if this is a reference to something in Oblivion. I don't really know, and Nenalata is definitely not a word that's ringing bells in my ears, but that might be just because of the fact that I have not done much exploring in Oblivion. I have done some. I've considered doing a Let's Play of it, but I have not really come to that decision yet. Let's see. Can I figure out which one the other one is? I know it's not the Wolf Queen. I don't think it's either of these two. I have a way of trying to figure it out. Is it this one? Nope. Is it... It's not that one. One? Nope. This one? Aha! This is the one. So it's the ferment of Aetherius. I'm going to get up real quick because I'm going to see if I can find... I had this issue before where I could not move for some reason. I'm wondering why. I want to pick up these books that I dropped real quick, which is one reason why I did get up. And then I'm wondering if maybe I can get up. And then, does that let me move? No, it does not. Why am I broken? Why can I not move? Oh, I probably can't move because I'm out of stamina. We will be reading through that other book. I just gotta fix myself. I am getting really tired of this whole overburdened stuff, but obviously there's not much I can do until we get to a better spot as far as owning a house. There are a few houses I know of that I could have ran off and grabbed by now, but it's the difficulty of grabbing these houses and then oh, there's my level up. I won't be leveling up in this because it's just a small little thing. We're going to go ahead and sit back down just so I can read. Alright, so it was that ferment book. This one. Alright. The Isles of Atenum. Isn't this the isle that the Sigic Order is from? Artenium is the third largest island in the Somerset archipelago, located south of the Merindian village of Potenza, the west of the mainland village of Runepeg, and west of the mainland village of Runepeg, is the best known for being home to the Sigic Order. Yeah, it is, okay. Perhaps the oldest monastic group in Tamriel. The earliest written record of Sigix is from the 20th year of the First Era and tells the tale of the renowned Breton sage and another Venerate, an author, Venerate, traveling to the Isles of Artanum to meet with Icarus, the right master of the Sigix. Even then, the Sigix were counseling Sirs of Kings and prompts of the elder ways. Taught to them by the original races that inhabited Tamriel. The Elder Ways is a philosophy of meditation and study said to bind the forces of nature to the individual's will. It differs from Magicka in origin, but the effects are much the same. Okay, this makes sense. I don't know much about the Sigix. Um, I never knew of them prior to Skyrim, and I don't know if they are a thing added in by Skyrim. But we'll see. That said, it is perhaps more than a coincidence that the Isle of Artaeum literally vanished from the shores of Somerset at the beginning of the Second Era, at about the time of the founding of the Mages Guild in Tamriel. I wonder if there's a connection there. Various historians and scholars have published theories about this, but perhaps none but Larchessus and his own shed light on the matter. 500 years passed, and Artaeum returned. The Sigix on the isle consisted of persons, mostly elves, who had disappeared and were presumed dead in the Second Era. They could not or would not offer any explanation for Artaeum's whereabouts during that time, or the fate of Larians and the original Council of Artaeum. Currently, the Sigix are led by Lore Master Celiaris, who has presided over the Council of Artaeum for the last 250 years, dear Lord. I guess they did say they were elves. The Council's influence in Tamriel's politics is tidal. The King of Somerset, particularly those of Meridian, have often sought the Sigix's opinion. The Emperor Uriel V has much influenced by the council in the early years. In the early, most generous part of his region, for his disastrous attack on Akaviri, it has even been suggested that the fleet of King Orin of Pyrdima was destroyed by a joint effort of Imperium Aetherius and the Sigic Order. The last four emperors, Uriel VI, Morithal, Pelagius VI, or is that Pelagius? That's Pelagius IV. Pelagius IV and Uriel VII have been suspicious of the Sigix enough to rouse Amdospodors from the island of Artaeum within the Imperial City. Well, again, I apologize for my reading skills being absolutely garbage. I am probably butchering these words to pieces. The island of Artaeum is difficult to chart geographically. It is said that it shifts continuously either at random or by degree of the council. Visitors to the island are so rare. Visitors to the island are so rare that as to be almost unheard of. Anyone desires a meeting with the Sigix may find contacts in Potesia or Runigba, as well as many of the kingdoms of Somerset. Interesting. On a side note, slightly related to this, I actually kind of have hope that the next Elder Scrolls game that they might release, if they ever release a new one, will be in the Somerset, will have the Somerset Isles included. I'm kind of hoping for Vardenfell Elsewhere to be the main area, and then the Somerset Isles to be a DLC released later. Mostly because of the fact that my characters have a lot of interest in um, uh, the Somerset Isles, but I would love for us to be able to go to Elsewhere and to Vardenfell. Not to mention, I feel like that would be very much a great exploration because the sands of Elsewhere would be really cool, especially seeing all the different Khajiit. And then the forests of Vardenfell would be very fun to explore. Where it more accessible, Arctam would be a favorable destination for travelers. I have been to the Isle once and still dream of its idyllic archwards and clear pastures, its still and silent lagoons, its misty woodlands, and the unique Sigic architecture that seems to be as natural as its surroundings as well as wondrous in its own right. It'd be interesting to see this isle, the Isle of Oteum. I highly doubt we're going to because I don't know if they bring this, but it'd be very fun. The Cophiga Tower is in particular, I would study, for it is a relic from the civilization and there predates the Elven High Elves of several hundred years and still used in certain rites by the Sigics. Perhaps one day I may return. Note: the author is currently on the Isle of Atam by generous consent of Master Sarginius of the Council of Artaeum. Eh, interesting, so he did get to go back. That, or he's there as he's writing this? Maybe he's writing it as he's about to leave his first visit. Who knows? Very interesting. So that makes sense why these three books were. So this book makes sense of why this was there, because it's the same. It's the Sigic Order was there as we were talking to the Sigic Order, and then the Night of Tears makes sense because that's directly about Sarthal. I don't quite get why the last Alien King was there. The last King of the Aliens. That's kind of a. This one kind of gives me like. I don't know why this one would have been part of it. My guess is that it has something to do with it being um, more about the elves and more about elves versus people. Oh, sorry about that. But obviously, it's a situation of it makes sense to me. I just don't understand why the elves would have why the last king of the aliens was considered a part of this. I don't know why this one would be so important, especially since that's all the way down in Cyrodiil. And so we don't really have the aliens or any reason to have thought that this book would be important. But this has been Story Time with Sarah. That's probably what I'm going to end up calling this. If you guys want to see more of these, hit that like button. If I don't get a lot of people liking this, I might not do this in the future just because of the fact that it does cause a lot of problems for me. Sarah will not be reading I will not be reading too many of the books in the actual Let's Play just because of the fact that I don't want those to clog up the actual Let's Play. And I also don't feel like she will need to. I will normally read them off camera like this, and then she'll talk about them as if she read them. But if you guys don't want spoilers, go ahead and head out. The next thing I'm going to talk about is some spoilers. If you like my content, please hit that subscribe button, help my channel grow a little bit better. And if you liked the video, hit that like button. It's all appreciated. If you want requests about about information, please leave comments down below, and I will try to answer those questions in another talking about Skyrim video. See you guys all later. All right, last warning towards spoilers. All right, so interestingly, with the Knight of Tears, to think that they were actually after the Eye of Magnus. The orb is actually quite powerful. It might even be more powerful with Aetherius Magic installed. We've seen how the boss of Felgro Keep, the Collar, and the boss of Sarthal, the one guy, was actually a lot more powerful. They were, heck, the Collar I could barely kill until I decided to swing a sword on her. Um, I remember running into that last time I played this too, as I was doing it. Um, I can tell you right now that a lot more of the bad guys we will be fighting are about the same. They are a lot more powerful than too much of. They're a lot more powerful than normal, and they're going to be a pain in my butt to fight. Um, Something else to talk about that's a bit of a spoiler out of this. We've started to notice how Sarah is realizing that when she dies, she comes back. She is actually remembering that. She is actually coming back to these points. At first, she wasn't conscious of it, but the more it happens, the more she'll notice it and the more she'll remember it. I like doing that with characters. I like giving a reason why they resurrect, not just that they're coming back. I like having them actually have memory because then I can actually explain why they're not going to do the same things over and over and over again. Um, Especially when role playing a character. Um, Again, this is the spoiler part. Um, I'm going to have it be that it's because of RK, or at least she's going to think it's because of RK. RK is the dragon god of time. He has the ability to manipulate time, and to her, he's manipulating the flow of time to keep her from dying. But my stamina is starting to drop, and I'd like to get and I'd like to do one more recording tonight. So I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching. See you guys all later. Bye.